안녕! Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Go Billy Q&A. This is a show where you can ask questions about anything you want related to Korean or Korea or anything, and get an answer to it. This week we have a question from YouTube, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about this one. This comes from Rainia Carson on YouTube, who asks, what are the most common errors you see from people who are learning Korean? This is kind of a difficult question to answer because when you're learning a foreign language, any foreign language, but especially one that's so different than English, such as Korean, there are a lot of different kinds of mistakes that you could make. So I could say that it's common for people to make mistakes such as using the wrong vocabulary word. For example, using Hangul for the Korean alphabet when they actually meant 한국어 for the Korean language, or misusing a grammar form or things like that. But these aren't specifically related to the Korean language. So instead I want to focus on a few mistakes people make that are more specific to Korean. First of all, word order. One of the first things that I learned when I studied Korean was the general word order of a sentence. Subject, object, verb. So saying something like, I like bread in Korean would be I, the subject, bread, the object, and like, the verb. And most beginners are actually pretty good at doing this. However, as soon as sentences start getting longer is where you're going to start seeing mistakes creeping in, such as knowing how to place adverbs in a sentence, or using more than one adverb, or where to put the time that something happens in a sentence. However, personally, I don't find word order to be that difficult of a concept, because in general it follows rules. And like any rules, they can be bent, but they typically do apply. And I made a video talking about word order here that you can check out if you're still a bit confused about it. Another common mistake is misusing particles, specifically the topic marker, subject marker, and object marker. Although you learn these particles early on, they're difficult because they don't translate easily into English, so they take a lot of practice to learn. I've also made videos about these as well, the topic and subject markers, and the object marker. There are other particles as well, but these are the three that are most often incorrectly used. And finally, what I think is the most important commonly made mistake by Korean learners is politeness level, specifically when to use the yo form, when to use 니다 form, and when it's okay to use casual speech. But on top of this, also knowing when and how to use honorific speech. For example, when talking to a stranger or asking someone older than you a question. An example of an honorific could be the seyo ending at the end of verbs. So you can take a verb like 하다 and you can change it to 하세요, and then that can be used in regular sentences or questions or for giving people polite commands. And while seyo is probably the most commonly known honorific ending, there are also additional honorific verbs, honorific words, and even honorific particles that you'll need to know as well. But so far I've made videos about the yo form as well as the 니다 form, so check those out first if you need any help. And when you're first learning Korean, you're not going to be expected to use these perfectly. Koreans know that their language is difficult to learn. However, once you're able to have a conversation with someone in Korean, they're going to expect that you know how to use these properly in order to avoid sounding rude. And the same thing applies for using correct word order and particles. You won't be expected to know them 100% as a beginner, so don't stress about it for now. You can always go back and learn them more later. And of course, there are other mistakes that people commonly make, but these are the ones that I felt are the most important. And that's the end of this episode. If you have your own questions, feel free to send them to me through YouTube here, or Twitter, or Facebook, or anywhere you can find me, and they might be featured on a future video. And remember that new videos are posted to this channel every single week, so if you haven't done so already, click subscribe and follow along. 그럼 다음에 또 봐!